for the soul.
Welcome, everybody, to the Perfectly Holistic Radio Show. I am so excited to be back with you guys tonight. And I have a very special guest, and we have a very spooky topic that I'm excited to talk with about. So, Kim Shotola with the Lightfoot Way, who is one of my amazing teachers that I have learned so much from in my new career, if you could call it, I guess it's that, for 10 years now. So, Kim, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm excited to be here this evening, and I must say, if this was any indication how things would perhaps go, was that I played Wordle almost every day, and I've been doing it for years. And I had to laugh quite hard when Saturday's Wordle was Ghost. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I figured that was going to tie in with the energies. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, there are some really weird energies going on these days. And I don't know about you, but my pets and spirit like to visit and hang out. And with a lot of the sessions that I do for people, it's not uncommon for a pet and spirit to be hanging out, to be present, to be bothering. And I say that in quotes, to be bothering a resident pet that's still there, that's a little traumatized because they don't understand what they're seeing. Um, and so, with all of the ascension thing that we are going through as a planet, as humanity, we know that the veil is thin. We know that there are animals on the other side, and amazing spirits and guides on the other side that are just rooting for us, and they are sending out their love and their energy to support this whole transition process. And I thought, it's probably a good time to bring this topic up because I don't think, first of all, pet parents don't really consider the paranormal as an even viable, potential issue when they come to me or perhaps you with some of the issues that their pets are going through. Um, it's wild, and I have to kind of always preface this by saying, okay, this might sound a little woo-woo, but did you realize this is what I found?
Love the woo-woo.
And it's funny because most of them are pretty open-minded to hearing those kinds of things. And I'm sure they're a little bit shocked at the same time because we're such visual people and creatures. And if we can't see it in front of us, it's out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't even come into our radar as a possibility, right?
Right.
So, so here we are introducing this concept of paranormal activity. And so, Kim, why don't you kind of, for people who are not exactly sure what paranormal activity might include, can you give us kind of an idea, like a framework that we're going to be working around today?
Sure, and I'm gonna preface it with I don't know about the para part anymore because it's becoming more and more normal. Like almost like people
Yeah.
can get to the point where they should expect it, as more the norm than it being abnormal or supernatural, for instance. So
Hmm.
the paranormal could be what a lot of people think is like ghost tours, for instance, and you're going to see ghosts. You don't know who these ghosts are unless they tell you the story about them, kind of thing. But so much of what animals are experiencing these days are loved ones, could be human in spirit that can be coming into a home. Most of them are going to be those that the animal knows, or at least they know they're connected to their pet parent.
Hmm.
Or it could be the situation, where it's an animal that's crossed over. Maybe that living animal knew it, or it could be an animal, uh, you know, that they didn't know, but again was connected to their pet parent. So there's a familiarity that the animal is sensing, even though they have never met that, say, animal or person maybe in their life.
Hmm.
But I also wanted to mention that to me, paranormal also includes what we're hearing from, especially uh, lots of dogs, not saying cats won't experience it too. They're very sensitive and that they can tune in. It perhaps bothers to a cat less, maybe, because they're just so used to the woo, I think. But the frequencies that are going on, it's not just about, for instance, the 5D frequencies that I say 5D, also just even 5G, because I truly feel I'm super sensitive. You probably are too, Pam, that those kind of things are being amped up. I can
Mhm.
hear noise, but then there's frequencies that are coming from, whether we want to call it the other dimensions, another reality, another timeline. People look at it in different ways, but that the animals could be sensing that. And we have had animals lately tell us they're sensing frequencies. That's the
Mm.
best way they can describe it. And it is bothering them, for instance.
Yeah,
It, yeah, and and sometimes so we're gonna have, angels come through or other life forms come through. So I consider all of that in the paranormal scope of things.
I would too. I would too.
Okay.
It's fascinating. Um, so a lot of people, sometimes when I first bring up the topic, they get a little scared. They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a ghost," what should I do? I'm thinking of one person in
Right, right.
particular, so is it something that we should be afraid of? Because that's the first thing that people tend to be reactive about, oh my gosh, what's it doing here? Do I need to worry about it? Is it harmful? Is it benevolent? All those things.
Right. Well, most of the times, at least in the situations I've encountered, whether it's in my own life or in students or clients, is that these are benevolent beings of all kinds, whether it's the human that has crossed over or the animal that has crossed over. But
Hmm.
because humanity is shifting into a higher, I don't say a higher state of being, people are calling it 5D, for instance, the animals are seeing so many more loved ones coming into their home or on their property, like they could be in the backyard in the garden, for instance,
Hmm.
but they're visiting because they really do want to help the pet parent. They're connected to the pet parent. They want to help the pet parent. So in those cases, uh, y- I don't want to say they're like Casper, so to speak, and that, well, they're friendly. I
Hmm.
wouldn't really call them a ghost, because m most animals, especially, they do transition, they cross over to whatever we want to call the other side, heaven. There's
Hmm.
the Rainbow Bridge. So those are going to be, yeah, very comfortable, I would say, even though it might be a little startling for some animals, especially the smaller ones or the ones that maybe are, maybe there is a little dementia going on, or maybe they're just they can't hear or see very well. And
Hmm.
so in those cases, they might act a little startled. But for the most part, when it's a loved one that the pet parent knows, the animal is yeah, the animal's going to be, I don't say happy to see them, but know that they're there for a higher purpose. And
Yes.
so absolutely nothing to worry about, and even when there's cases, Pam, of what I would call a true ghost. For instance, for instance, I had someone, they went to visit a very haunted graveyard, you could say, from one of the major battles. I can't remember if it was Custer's or which
Hmm.
which one it was, but they brought home into their apartment, they brought home a soldier who was
Oh, wow.
looking for his family
Oh,
and was causing all kind of disturbances in the house to the point that it was affecting the dogs, for instance, were acting very concerned, very worried, anxious, all of that.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so it's again, there was nothing to be afraid of. It was a matter of just talking to this soldier. I gave information to the pet parent so that they could talk to the soldier and he could cross over to find his family. And
Mm.
once they spoke with him, everything stopped.
Isn't that
You know,
amazing?
like yeah. So it was, stuff being pushed around the house, falling over, like I'm going to say a
Wow.
vase or a computer or whatever,
Mm.
noises that shouldn't have been coming, just stuff like that, that was
Yeah.
what you could say, abnormal, but they realized it wasn't. The same person would have their father visit them who was in the spirit world, and that was a little bit different energy,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a difference with the two energies and the way the dogs responded in the house.
Yes. Yes. I have two two kitties. Well, I
Mhm.
have four, but the two that I'm referring to is Gunner and Aylin. And Gunner knew all three of the cats in spirit who visit, and Aylin knew two of them. Um,
Okay.
and what's interesting, and one of the things I wanted to ask you is, do you think they see or maybe a combination of yes and no? Do they see like like what they look like physically, or do they just see orbs, or do they possibly see both?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it depends, but they could see. I think often though they know who's there and they can see like an outline or some kind of
Mm,
form, and they can recognize them if they've met them before, for instance. But and I know I've taken like a picture before where my dog was staring on the wall, and I
hmm
had a feeling that that was our dog who had transition, and that's why they were staring. It was about his eye level where that dog would have been if he was
mm,
next to this bigger dog. And so I was able to take my camera and take a picture, and sure enough, it formed. It was an orb. The orb was there, right at that
yes.
same level, and I knew it was our dog that had passed on. So I think that if we have animal communication abilities, intuitive abilities, we definitely can ask that animal what they're seeing, or we can just tune in ourselves and see what we're sensing is there, you know, because sometimes,
Yes.
there might not be anything seen other than, I say a dog staring at a wall or the cat staring at the ceiling, you
hmm
know.
hmm
Usually, for me, what I have kind of noticed in talking with others is that when they're looking directly at the ceiling, the human form, for instance, or animal form that's in spirit is not going to be stuck up on the ceiling. In that case, they're seeing an orb,
Or yes.
right?
I
When
yeah.
they're looking, yeah, at the wall or a corner, for instance,
Mm,
then that normally is, especially if you kind of follow their nose level and the eyes, and you can
mm,
see, okay, they're looking at someone who's, 4 feet tall or 6 feet tall.
hmm
And it's kind of interesting because they are staring at, you know, normally the face, where that face would be located.
Yes.
And yeah, and then that would normally be a human figure. And if they're looking lower on the wall, for instance, then it could be a fellow animal that they're seeing.
hmm
Unless it was I'm going to say a baby, for instance, or just a 1-year old or a 2-year old. But generally they're looking at. that like dogs and cats that are smaller size if they're looking
Hmm.
lower down. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
yes.
fascinating.
Well, it really is. And I had a most unusual experience a couple years ago when Aylin was in the kitchen. It was nighttime and the lights in the kitchen were off, but I was in the living room on, in the living room lights, lamps and stuff were on. And she was in the kitchen up on the count on the above the cupboards. They can access up there. And she was just crying, like distress crying. And I was like, what is going on with you? Like, why are you so upset? And so I got my phone out and I took a video. I just stood in the kitchen and I just flipped the video on and recorded. I didn't see anything in front of me, but when I looked in the video that was being recorded, I could literally see orbs just crossing in front of my phone. Some are going really fast, some were going kind of slow, like puttering along. And it was like a freaking light show in my kitchen. No wonder she was so
Wow.
upset. She was,
Yeah.
and I shared it online because I knew people wouldn't believe me, you know? And then when I went back, I was trying to, I get the pendulum out. I'm like, okay, who's here? And I start asking all these questions. There were fairies going, we've done the fairy class. And so they followed me. Um, but then cats and spirit were here. They were the slower ones. And I was like getting big hits on Snow Bear at the time. So, he's my soul. He was one of the reasons I do what I do. And
Yeah.
he was there that night, and I'm sure there was at least one more, but it was quite a shock for me to see with my own eyes on a video all of these orbs. I didn't see like a physical form. And I
Hmm.
wonder sometimes, like, Gunnar gets really upset and Aelin gets really upset. Gunnar's more vocal. So when he's upset, he's withdrawn, he's yelling, he's just very, very vocal. And you can just tell it's more like this distress, leave me alone kind of cry. So I get out the pendulum. I'm like, okay, who is bothering you? And I go through my list of all these pets in spirit, and they visit on the daily. So, it's very stressful for him. I've kind of figured out he doesn't recognize the orbs, I don't think. Maybe on a higher consciousness level, he might, but in his
Hmm.
3D form, I don't think he recognizes who they are. All he probably sees is this light show, circling around him or following him around the house, and he's very mad. Um, so it's very disturbing that they are so persistent because when they want my attention, they go irritate these two. This is one of them right here. Um, so I have
Sounds like
learned,
they really want you to communicate. Yeah.
well, and that's what I do. Like sometimes I'll just do free writing, like talk to me. What do you want to tell me? And I'll just let it stream and write it out their messages. But what I've also started doing is pulling out my tarot deck and go, okay, what do you want to tell me? And I just lay out some cards and like 3 card spread or 2 card spread and go, show me what you want me to know. And it's so fascinating because they always, sorry, we have cats in here. Um, they always have some kind of message that is encouraging. It's like providing guidance. It is to give me advice, telling me what to work on. Hi, Breeze. Sorry, you guys have cat butt right now. So it never fails. But it's just they're always here for support. It's never
Hmm.
here like to shame or to scare or whatever. It's really they're supporting me or they're watch. Sometimes they just want to watch over, it feels like, because I'll ask, do they have a message? Sometimes we get a no. They're just popping in to, check on everybody and then they I have to ask them to leave a lot because it's so upsetting, and then
Mm.
my cats don't eat their food and then they go hide and so it has consequences sometimes. It's so frustrating because I'm just like, will you please leave? I love you, but you cannot be here right now. You cannot be inside. You're upsetting Aylin. You're upsetting Gunner. Now he
Mhm.
has a UTI. Thank you. I mean,
Oh,
so
yeah.
stressed.
Well, it's true. The cats, when they get stressed, you're right, they tend to get the UTIs a lot,
Yeah,
you
or the
know.
cystitis type of, conditions and that kind of thing. And he just wails and it hurts me because I'm like, I love that they want to visit, but I don't want them bothering them, And
Mhm.
so I'll ask him a lot of times, if you have a message for me, show me in nature, show me when I'm outside, give me another, you know, send me an animal outside, send me a spirit guide, animal guide, whatever it is.
Right.
Send me another message. Don't bother Gunnar and Aylin. They're not getting the
Right. Yeah.
message, Kim.
I love
I must
that.
be doing something wrong. They still keep
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, well, yeah, and maybe they have more to say. Like if you set your for instance, if you set your parameters and tell them ahead of time when you don't want them to be there, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a good
and
idea.
normally they will honor our request.
Mm, okay.
My daughter had to do that. And because her clairvoyant skills are far stronger than mine even, and she was having all kinds of spirits come to her.
Mm,
So they even wanted to tap on her window at night. So she had to talk to them. We wrote it out so she could talk to them and tell them all her parameters for what, for when they could come, kind of thing. And
mm.
everything, and basically it stopped, the
Wow.
cupboards, there was just all kinds of stuff. But yeah,
Yes.
it's the parameter setting, in other words, like setting intentions for those people who are trying to figure out what they might want to do is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just setting their intentions and writing it out first is really great. So you get everything down and then
Mm-hmm.
say it out loud, and they should honor that. So
Yeah.
that's worked really well for people. But yeah,
That's
I love
that's good advice.
yeah, I love the alternate ways though. Setting the parameters, the intention setting, telling them to deliver the messages through like wild animals or
Mm-hmm.
other signs, or through, like you talked about, the tarot deck or an oracle deck or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
exactly.
some,
So,
yeah,
mhm,
some seem to, I was going to say, some animals are more tolerant of them, and
mhm.
others aren't.
I find it interesting because the 2-year-old cats never knew these spirits and they never seem bothered by them. So I don't know if they don't see them or they're not following the young ones because obviously they don't know the young ones. It's just very interesting how they tend to target certain ones in the family and then other ones they totally leave alone.
And I don't know if you've ever tuned in, Pam, just to see about like the the depth of their soul of the individual cats, because you could have a kitten, for instance, or a puppy, and it be a very old soul, and that it has had many profound experiences in life and other lifetimes, other
Mm,
incarnations, and that might make a difference too.
that's
Um,
certainly true. That's a good point. That is a good
yeah.
point. Um, so do you have any like really cool stories besides the soldier that you've kind of
Oh,
encountered or
well, I'm we I remember like there's been a number of times when we were going to have family members that were going to pass. And for
Mm,
instance, I could see my husky. Um, looking at the wall, staring at the wall where a human would be. I would tune in. I knew what family member it was. I even told my husband, so I knew they were trying to let us know that it was like the sister that was still alive of his mother, basically was going to be passing soon. And so there's been instances like that when especially my husky has been very tuned in to the spirit world. And when he kind of freezes and looks at that wall, and I'm like, you are
Mm,
seeing someone, let me tune in. And it's always been a family member
mm.
that is trying to let us know about another family member. Yeah, so but that has happened a bit. Yeah, as far as having our own animals, really cognizant.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's when they see a familiar, I won't say a familiar energy because they didn't know, the husky did not know any of
Right.
these spirits, but knew that they were associated with myself and my husband. So it was cool then. It was all right. But,
Yes.
but yeah, he's more sensitive to what I would call galactic energies, Pam.
Mm. Oh, I love that.
More a little more sensitive to those kind of energies, which are going to feel probably very different than they are going to be a animal or a human loved one.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
are there particular types of entities or spirits that tend to like animals like a lot? Like they're attracted to, for example, are some spirits more attracted to dogs or cats, for example? Or do you find it's the same,
I haven't noticed that there's yeah,
a difference?
particular kind of energy that's attract for myself and what I've heard with others.
Hmm.
I mean, there's been occasions where, I mean, this is a whole different experience. When you get really weird experiences, are the ones where someone picks up a weird hitchhiker at a bar, for instance,
Mm,
and and it comes home with them, to the family
yes.
home. And it might even horses can handle a lot. For instance, I mean, they're just so big themselves, but even a horse could react to some energy that's and some energy that got picked up from,
Hmm.
say, the battlefield or a bar or whatever. Those kind of energies are going to be very different than our human and animal loved ones that we're
Hmm.
familiar with. So that energy is going to come across more strong and can affect animals, but overall, I mean, I haven't noticed though that spirits are drawn to particular animals. I think if possible, they're gonna try to utilize whatever animals are in the home, because sometimes it might only be one animal, it could be
Hmm.
a multi-family,
Yeah.
like you have multiple cats. But yeah, so I think they're just gonna try to see if they can get the attention of whatever animal they can
Mm.
that uh, might be able to let their pet parent know, hey, there's something going on here. So that's
Interesting.
that's the hope of our I say our loved ones, right?
Hmm.
The hope
Hmm.
that our loved ones are, if they can reach their human loved one that's still alive, not to say that there aren't, let's say there was a cat spirit and it wants to come back and visit the other cats that it, especially knew. I mean, that happens, or a dog wants
Hmm.
to visit, or it could be a cat visiting a dog and they were just great friends
Hmm.
when the
Hmm.
cat was alive. So, yeah, but these days so much is tied into humanity's evolution and the ascension process. And so there are so many people and myself, that are experiencing the spirits of loved ones, both human and animal, but even especially though the human, they are showing up a lot in people's homes these days, where it's
Mm,
becoming more normal. And it is because they are really trying to support their pet parent, even just to be a presence, to offer comfort, to offer love, because so many are really, it's like a yo-yo. It's very easy to be happy one moment and then wondering why you're here another moment, or just feel very down, whatever it may be. Just a
mhm.
lot of extremes going on with the pet parents,
Yeah.
and especially the human loved ones, that have crossed over, are visiting a lot visiting a
Yes.
lot. Yeah. I mean, so are,
And
I
it,
mean, animals are too, but the humans really are. And so, yeah, they are, Pam. It's a lot. It's a lot.
and it is. And I don't think most people are even aware. Do you think people, if they're, are there specific signs that pet parents can look for if they're curious to know if one of their family members, pet or human, is kind of hanging
Right.
around or
So
checking in on things, you know?
that's a great question. So mainly, look, if there's a living animal, look for the living animal, and it, like I said, staring at the wall, staring at the ceiling, acting odd, acting like there's
Mm,
something wrong, that they're trying to get your attention, and maybe they look in one direction, but they look back at you. So it's not that they have to blatantly stare and keep the stare, but they're trying very hard to maybe get the attention. So that could be that there's, a loved one there. But let's see, it could also just be that with animal spirits, they, and so many, Pam, I have to throw this in there, is so many heart animals are leaving. I mean, it has just been like back before the pandemic happened,
hmm
right? There
hmm
was a ton of animals leaving. There have been a ton leaving, in the last 6 months or more. And it's not stopping. It is a lot. I've been doing a lot of sessions lately,
mm,
but those animals that are crossing over, they can be coming back, showing signs such as, you feel like they're next to you, or there's a depression in the bed. Maybe a toy that they had has moved, and the person left their toys, there. It can be that, um, yeah, they feel some kind of sensation against their leg or against their body, where the skin could be sensitive and is exposed.
hmm
So they could try to do that. Uh, but yeah, I know some people have literally felt like they curled in bed with them. Like or they get up the next day and there's a depression, like where the covers are or whatever. They know
hmm
something was there and it wasn't their other animal. And they might not even have another animal. But yeah, so definitely the animals can try and give us signs, the ones that have crossed, especially those heart animals that have crossed over. And if it was a human loved one, for instance, they might do something too. You know, could be a feather that fall just all of a sudden falls out of nowhere. Like
mm,
like not even, it could just literally come from nowhere and fall down, or a penny might show up if someone connects, the Rainbow Bridge, and their loved ones with pennies, for instance. So there could be some little special signs like that. Some people think, whether it's a human or an animal that's crossed, if like the butterflies were special, like a yellow butterfly or a hawk. Some
mm,
people, it's just very special to them. Or cardinal, like we don't have cardinals where I live, but cardinals are very common signs too, that a loved one's trying to reach out to them. But yeah, it's just
mm,
unusual wild animal activity, like they're trying to get your attention, because the human and animal spirit world will use whatever they can. So if their loved one's outside, they might get that dragonfly to come right up to them. And what some people are even noticing sometimes is that even multiple animals, like different insects or a little reptile and an insect, different ones will come together even to try and get people's attention
Mm,
sometimes. So the animal world is trying to be kind of like a messenger often for those that have crossed over. So
mm,
people are seeing that also happen. It doesn't, in other words, just happen to happen inside the home, though a lot can happen inside the home, but it
mm-hmm,
can also be outdoors too, you know, and yeah, but to me, a main indicator would be the animals that are living, watch them, watch
mm,
them closely because they are seeing a lot and
yes.
they can help people figure out, who that could be. If is it an animal or a human that has crossed over that is trying to reach them
Mm-hmm.
and just it yeah.
There's, you brought up to mind for me something that I heard. I would love to get your thoughts. So I heard once that when someone is suddenly thinking about their pet that they were like, maybe it was like their soul pet, or maybe one that had recently crossed over, and all of a sudden they just become very emotional and sad and like overwhelmed. I heard that it's because the pet is there and they're making a heart connection in that moment to let them know I'm here. And maybe this person doesn't understand why all of a sudden I started crying, you know? And I was thinking about
Mhm.
my cat or my dog, and all of a sudden I start crying and I just, I miss them so much. And it's like out of the blue. Have you heard that? Is there some validity to that? Like their pet is all of a sudden there making a heart connection with them?
Well, that absolutely could happen. I know, Pam, that a lot of people are extra emotional these days, and
Hmm.
sometimes it does come out of the blue, but maybe if they were thinking about that animal or the human that had crossed over and then all of a sudden they get very emotional. It definitely could be that that's because they're right there and they're trying to
Hmm.
get their attention and they're connecting with them on that deep heart level. And
Hmm.
I actually was thinking about that earlier today. One of the ways that we haven't mentioned yet for people to feel the presence of their animal and to try and make a connection with them or a human loved one, but would be for them to even just close their eyes and they could put like their hands over their heart area and they could think about, for instance, that cat that they love dearly that passed over, and it may have been even recently,
Hmm.
and just with their intention, connect their heart to the animal's heart. And they might envision this beautiful golden light or this even a cord, it could be silver or lavender or whatever. I mean, it could be as much as they would like to put into it. But the main thing is connecting their heart to the animal's heart and them feeling the love coming from their animal and just what it was
Hmm.
like, because that love is still there, right? It is still
Hmm.
there, very present. It never goes away. Love is truly everlasting. The connection is everlasting. And and they can send love to their animal. So they could feel the animal's love and they can send love to their animal. But they could do that anytime they wanted, you
Hmm.
know, whether it was sitting in their bed at night or it was sitting outside under a tree. They could make that heart-to-heart connection whenever they wanted. And when they tune into their animal and they want to say something, for instance, to their animal and see if they could even get anything back, they could see how it resonates with their heart. because it's possible that they could feel a sensation in their chest,
Mm-hmm.
that they could feel something that feels like a yes, for instance, or oh, well, this is kind of like, well, this would be a no. Maybe the no feels weird, it feels off. But the
Mm-hmm.
yes just feels so calming, so peaceful, so loving, so natural.
Yeah.
So it's possible that they can do that with the heart. So thank you for bringing that up. But
Oh, no.
yes, if they're feeling extra emotional, it could be yeah, that animal is right there with them, and they want to stay very close to their pet parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often. And their soul, I mean, they can be here, they can be somewhere else, but their soul is very much wanting to be with their pet parent and comfort them, especially during these interesting times. Yes, during these
Yes,
very interesting. Yes.
I agree. And I'll just share one quick story before we wrap some stuff up.
Yeah.
Is a soul walk-in. I've actually had one of my cats do a soul
Oh,
walk-in
okay.
with Aylin, my Hershey, my soul
Wow.
cat.
Yes.
He had very specific things that he would do that was just his characteristic. He would go, when you hold him, he would go one shoulder to the next, to the next, to the next, and he would go back and forth like that and just give you as much love as you could take, right? And I was here
Oh,
working a couple years, my first year here, and it was a Saturday night, and I was home and I was just working here on the computer. And she comes over to me, climbs into my arms, and she goes from shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. And I'm like, you are not Aylin. And so once again, I did my little muscle testing to figure out, are you, are you Hershey? And I got a yes. It was a strong yes. And we cuddled like that for probably 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, it was
oh,
as if he had jumped out of her body and she literally like jumped and she sat over here and she looked at me like, what the hell just happened to me? You could see the confusion in her face, like, I don't know what that was, but I don't like it. You know what I mean? And she was completely like distant, not herself. It was the most cool thing. When I figured out what had happened, I was like, holy cow. I have never experienced that before. But that's kind of an unusual
okay.
paranormal activity that I just wanted to share with people because you
It's
never know.
That's true. And it happens more than people realize, and they don't always know that that's their previous animal that has stepped in temporarily. I like to think that the present animal, the living animal, has given temporary
Permission. Yeah.
permission, right?
Hmm.
Temporary permission to allow that departed soul to come through. But no telling what they're going to end up doing, like you said, and it could just feel really weird to them, and then they're going to leave. But the behavior changes dramatically, and I've heard about this on for dogs and cats. I'm not saying
Hmm.
it could happen to anything, but the stories I've seen it happen, and with my own animals or other students and clients, yeah, it definitely can happen, and it's a gift.
It
It's a
is a
gift.
gift.
It is a gift.
Yes.
It
It
is a
was
gift
it was so
between the two of
amazing.
them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, but just to feel like I was holding him again, priceless. Priceless, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's just one of those things
that's so
we just
beautiful.
cherish. Oh, I know, it was amazing. Well, Kim, this has been so much fun, and I can't believe we're out of time. But if people want to learn more about what you do, where can they find you?
At our website, thelightfootway.com.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just real briefly, what do you have any classes or programs coming up that you want to plug?
Oh, sure. Well, we are going to teach animal communication starting
Fabulous.
In July, and so people are
Nice.
registering for that right now. But yes, we are
Awesome. And
through
that's
Zoom,
a
Zoom class. Yeah.
yes, yes. And it's an awesome experience. I highly recommend it to everybody. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for being here tonight and for sharing your insight and your wisdom. And I want to leave pet parents knowing that to keep their eyes open and they're have an open mind and an open heart, right? For any kind of paranormal activity that might be going on in your home that maybe you're not aware of. And watch your pets, watch their behavior. And if you want to see your pets in spirit or family members, just call them in, right? Just call them in. Come visit me because they will. So be careful what you ask
Yes,
for.
yes, they will. Right.
So be
Yeah.
careful what we ask for. Okay, well, anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. And I hope this was a lot of fun and entertaining and give you something new to think about in terms of the way our pets connect with us. Sometimes it can be a bit a little scary.
Yeah.
Just joking. But anyway, thanks you guys so much for being here, and we will be back again next month for another great show.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh,
All
well,
right.
you're welcome. I'm sorry about the snafu with whatever. That was so weird, but
No, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you. And I will send you a copy of the recording link as
okay.
soon as I get it, and we can share that out